This is Join Us in France, episode 393. 393. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is the podcast where we talk about France. Everyday life in France, great places to visit in France, French culture, history, gastronomy, and news related to travel to France. Today, I bring you a conversation with Michel Ravitsky about life on the Canal du Midi. Michel is French and a young retiree. He lives on his barge part-time and has taken some great trips on his barge on the canal, as he will explain. If you ever think about renting a boat, a barge on any canal in France, and especially on the Canal du Midi, you'll want to listen to this episode because Michel gives us a great insider view of what it's like. This podcast is supported by donors and listeners who buy my tours and services, including my itinerary consult service and my GPS self-guided tours of Paris on the VoiceMap app. And you can browse all of that at Annie's Boutique, joinusinfrance.com/boutique. I emailed the people who joined my mailing list to let them know about the French Immersion Week / Join Us in France reunion that will take place between Sunday, May 21st and Saturday, May 27th in 2023. That's a bit of a long name. I'm not sure I'll keep calling it that. Maybe I'll call it France Boot Camp or something like that. What do you think? The concept is that you learn French in the morning in a language school. We'll go to lunch, and then in the afternoon, we'll do a visit around our lovely city of Toulouse, where Elise and I live. So we're looking to do our first ever France boot camp in Toulouse, because it'll be fun. Is it on your calendar yet? Save the date. And if you want to hear about it, subscribe to my newsletter by going to joinusinfrance.com/newsletter and then email me. You just reply to the email and let me know that you are interested in the France boot camp. I have a long list already, but we can take some more for now. And, I know you've been saying that you want to learn French, right? You've been saying that for years. Let's get it done, shall we? This is where I would say, bonjour Michel Ravitsky and welcome to Join Us in France. And I did just that. Unfortunately, I lost the first few minutes of this recording because of a technical issue. But my husband was with us and he is the one who recommended Michel to me. So he's going to summarize the part of the conversation that you're not hearing.
I've known Michel for a handful of years now. We both sing in choirs and we keep meeting each other at each other's concerts. We know people in common. We have sung together, I think, in one project, but mostly we've just gotten to know each other because we have choir singing friends in common. And I ended up on a fun email list of his letting people know when he was coming into town and if they wanted to come say hi and have a drink with him on his barge right in near the city center, that we were always welcome. And so I bumped into him one day and said, by the way, so what's this about your barge? And he told me some about what he was doing and that in fact, he originally, when he retired, he wanted to have a place in the city because he lives away from the city, but he likes to come in for concerts and to see people and that sort of thing, and was planning on, after retiring, getting a studio apartment in the city center. But then he saw how expensive real estate in the city center has gotten to be, and as somebody who has always loved boats, he's been sailing since he was a young teenager, and found out that renting dock in the harbor closest to the city center was actually very reasonable. And although at first it seemed that buying a barge would be a little bit much as well, at least in France, but then he found out that there were barges available in the Netherlands at more reasonable prices. And so he went to the Netherlands near Amsterdam and saw some boats and found one that he fell in love with, and that was at a very good price and much better than buying a studio. And so whenever he comes into town for a weekend or for a concert or something like that, he's on the barge and he lets his friends know that they can come say hi and have a drink if they want. Really fun guy.
And his barge actually is a bateau d'intérêt patrimonial. It's a gorgeous barge. It has a lot of wood paneling, and I didn't take a lot of photos inside because, it's his home. I felt awkward, but I will ask him if he can send me some photos because that way he can send me whatever he wants. But it's gorgeous in there. There's lots of beautiful brass lights, beautiful wood paneling, just gorgeous. So it was a pleasure to talk to him. And now we pick up with the question that I asked him about how he got his barge from Holland to the southwest, because he mentioned that in Holland, navigation is so common. There's so many canals that he actually was afraid of getting lost because so many people have boats over there. But that once he got to France, it was much easier, but it was still a long process. So here's Michel Ravitsky. So how did you get the barge down to the Canal du Midi?
It's quite a long trip. It took me like 3 months. The boat was in a harbor close to Amsterdam. So you have to get through all the canals in Belgium and Holland. And this is quite a challenge because it's like the French road system. There are roads and as there are canals. So if you don't have a GPS, you can get lost very easily. So I had a little software like Google Maps, but for canals. Uh-huh. And then once you get to France, it's much more easier. You take a canal whose name is Canal du Nord, North Canal. And then when you are on the Oise, you go to the river Seine. And then the Yonne, a tributary of the Seine. And then you have very nice canals. You have 3 canals, and you can choose whatever you want. And then you go to the river Saône, which is a contributory of the Rhône. And then when you go on the road towards the sea, it's very easy. But on the other side, the stream, the current is quite strong. So you have to do that in autumn. If you want to go north on the Rhône, it's too strong. Yeah, at springtime you can't make it. It's nearly impossible with a small boat like mine. Huh. And then once you are at the end of the Rhône, close to Arles, then you have the beginning of the Canal du Midi, and that's it.
That's it. Wow. So it took you 3 months, you said?
3 months, yeah. Yeah, it's quite a long time, but it's very beautiful. It's a very good memory. I did it with my son, and we had a very nice time. So it's not bothering. Of course, if you want action every time, it's not the choice you want to make, but
it's a peaceful kind of leisurely trip.
Exactly. You're going 8 kilometers an hour, so it's not very. Sometimes joggers were faster than me. Some jogger or some people.
So you have to have a permit, right, to operate a boat
France,
like this?
You have to get a permit if you are a French citizen, which is very strange because I'm sailing since I'm 15 and don't have any license, any permit for a sailboat, but I had to pass my driving license for
the
barges.
Barge?
Yeah, when I bought this one. But it's not very difficult, so it's not. You have to do it, but it's not a big deal.
Yeah, but so visitors don't have to have a permit?
I don't think so. I mean, if you have foreigners, you don't need to have a permit. And one thing which I'm pretty sure, if you rent a boat to a French company, you don't have to have a permit. This is a big issue. Because sometimes people don't have any ID, any practical sense. So you spend like half an hour with the guy who is renting you the barge. He explains you how to go backwards, the basic things. But when you're coming in a lock, sometimes it can be a problem.
Yeah, it would be better if they knew
a little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit more, yeah. A bit more training would be good in that case. Yeah. Okay. So along the Canal du Midi, do you take trips? Do you have favorite places where you like to stop?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are many places. Well, you have to know that when you are in Toulouse, you can go eastwards or westwards. Westward is not the Canal du Midi, which is nice, not as nice as the Canal du Midi, but it's quite interesting. And there is a river which goes in the Canal latéral à la Garonne. The name is la Baïse. And this is a very nice place where to go. Very narrow. You can't go with a big boat. It's a river. It's not a canal.
Mm-hmm.
And you have little locks, so you have to make sure your boat is wide enough to get inside the lock. But it's a very beautiful and very peaceful place, which I like a lot.
So that's going west.
That's going west. East, the Canal du Midi. The first interesting spot for me is the Seuil de Naurouse. This is the place where the canal is the highest, at its highest point.
Yep.
It's beautiful. It has wonderful trees which were planted by the guy who designed and built the canal. So this is a very beautiful spot. And it's 3 days away, less than 3 days away from Toulouse. So it's if you have a week, you can go there and be back in less than a week. It's a very nice.
So when you do that, do you just sail during the day and then you stop at night?
It's forbidden to sail at nighttime, and the locks are closed. So there is no point about that. You have to stop. I think the locks close around 7 p.m.
Uh-huh.
And it's better to stop before to make sure you find a nice place where you can spend the night. So you just take your time. I mean, in the morning, they open at 8, I think, sometimes 7. But people don't like to wake up very early. So
So you can dock your boat along the sides, or do they have specific ports where you have to go?
Both. I mean, there are some specific spots where you would find electricity, water, if you need some. But there are little docks which have nothing, just to tie the boat.
Yeah.
And on my boat, I have another option. I have big metal bars which I can put in the ground.
Oh.
And then I can tie the boat on that bars if there is no wind.
Uh-huh.
For instance, that would be a very good idea, because if you have strong gusts, it's not very reliable.
Uh-huh.
But when it's very calm, you find a place where you want to stop. If your water tank is full, if you have enough battery, you're the king of the world. I mean, and I love that.
Yes, that's great. That's awesome. That's wonderful. So it's kind of like an RV, really. Like it's like RV, a recreational vehicle, camping cart or something.
Yeah, it's a floating camping car, I would say.
It's a big floating camping car. I mean, some camping cars are very small. This one's 15 meters. It's pretty big.
Yeah.
You have some good, it's
and also
comfortable.
there is much more room than in a camping car. When you are in a camping car, you have to count every things you bring inside, because there are not so many places to put your stuff.
Yeah.
Here, there are bunks, lockers everywhere, so it's not a problem.
Yeah. So when you stop somewhere, how do you get around? Do you have a bike or?
I have a bike, yeah. You can use the bike if you have to go to a grocery shop or whatever. And also you can walk, some interesting walks. So you can do whatever you want. You are always close to a village or a place if you want to take a cafe or whatever. Well, sometimes you have to make like 4 or 5 kilometers. So if you want to take the aperitif at evening, it could be a bit difficult. But also, so I was telling you about the Seuil de Naurouse, which is a very wild place. I mean, there is no cafe. You have very nice cities like, for instance, Castelnaudary, which is a beautiful place, and there is a lot of room. They have a lot of docks for the recreational vessels, barges and rental boats. And Castelnaudary is a very nice place, and the capital of the cassoulet, so you have to stop there.
Yes. Yeah, we did a whole episode about Castelnaudary, so it's a nice place, yes.
Yeah, it's a very nice place. And also, you have very interesting locks, which were originally built by Riquet. So we are talking about the 17th century. And they are nearly in the same shape that they were originally built. So it's quite interesting. It's a very beautiful architecture. All the bridges, the genuine bridge from Riquet, are beautiful. So if you're interested in architecture, civil engineering, it's a paradise.
Yeah, it's very nice, yeah. Do you think there are a lot of tourists along the canal?
Well, it depends the period of the year. Mm-hmm. And this is a big problem for me, because July and August are overcrowded, especially with people who don't know very well how to use their boats. So when you have, sometimes you can have 10 boats waiting for the lock. And if there is some wind, it can become a nightmare. If you want to go there, it's better to be there in June or in September. But July and August, for me, it's too crowded.
Too crowded.
Yeah.
And is it mostly French tourists or international?
Very international.
Ah,
yeah, a lot of
international.
English people, Americans, mostly some Germans too. And also you have some yachts which wants to go from the Med to the Atlantic Ocean and don't want to go to Gibraltar.
Yeah.
So you will see some sailboats. We have one just beside. The mast is on the deck. And they go through up the canal to avoid the big turn, the big circle through Gibraltar.
Yes, yes.
And this is, I mean, in spring and summer, you will meet a lot of these people.
Yeah. And when you stop at the capitainerie, are there like fees that you have to pay all the time, every time? Or?
Well, if you're in the wilderness, you don't have to pay anything. Every harbor, you have to pay the fees, but they are quite reasonable. It's very cheap, around 10 euros, I would say.
Yeah, camping fee.
Exactly. Yes, that's the idea. Depending on the number of people you are on board, if you want to take a shower or not, or whatever. And you have to pay to the canal authority right to use the canal, which is for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, or 1 year.
I see.
And this depends on the length of the boat. If you rent the boat, the rental company will pay for you.
Yeah.
So you don't see that. But if you have a private owner, you have to pay. And it's not very cheap. It's not outrageously expensive, but you have to count on that.
Yeah, you have to pay.
Yeah, you have to pay.
I've heard a lot about the trees along the Canal du Midi being diseased and things like that.
This is true.
What have you seen?
Well,
Yeah.
not the name in English.
Platane? David's going to look it up.
Okay.
Les platanes, yeah, that's the traditional trees along
They
the
were planted
canal.
by Riquet. And they all have got a disease. And so the canal authority had to cut them because they were dangerous. They were possible to break on a windy day. And they replant new trees, not only this one, but they also made a genetical modification on the seeds of the new trees, which resist to this disease.
Uh-huh.
But you would find some places where during 5 kilometers you don't see a single tree.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's a very big budget.
Yeah.
So they ask people to support them, to donate. Yeah. It's really, it has been a big problem.
Yeah.
Also, the roots of the trees are part of the canal, and also they help the canal to stay in a good condition.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal. Yeah.
So there are a lot of new young trees along the canal now.
Yeah.
It's going to take a decade or more to grow them.
Yeah, I would say a century.
Yeah.
To have the big trees as we had before. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you like to do when you're on the canal? Like, are there places you like to stop and visit? I mean, you talked about Castelnaudary et le Colonneau Rouge.
Yeah, Colonneau Rouge. Also, since I got retired in 2017, and I started to do watercolor. And I love to, stop at the beginning of an afternoon and take an hour or two or 3 hours to make a watercolor in a nice place.
Wow.
If you love activity, it's not the best thing you will like, but it's so peaceful that for me it's very inspiring to be there and to take your brushes and to do some watercolors.
Yeah. Are there a lot of services along the canal? Like you mentioned showers.
Cities.
Okay.
And some, but very scarce, some municipalities can have a dock with electricity. And sometimes they offer you for 1 night the stay. They will not cover you for the staying overnight. I would say it's not difficult to find a place you will be okay. The thing is to try to, when you're scheduling a cruise, to give you time to walk around, to discover a city. Don't forget that you're walking on 8 kilometers an hour basis, so it's like a pedestrian mostly.
Yeah.
More or less.
It's
and you have to also count on the time to pass a lock.
How long does it take, average?
If there is no queue, it could be done in 20 minutes. But if there is another boat on the other way,
coming the other direction,
it could be up to 40 minutes.
Oh yeah.
And if there is a queue, then you don't know.
Yeah, could be.
It could be 2 hours.
Yeah.
And this is boring.
You're just waiting.
Yeah, there is nothing to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is too much boat to find a place where you can dock the boat, so you have to stay in the middle of the canal. That's why I don't like to sail in summertime.
Yeah, July and August, you don't sail so much.
No.
Yeah.
I try to avoid it.
Yeah. So, once I was, I think it was in Castelnaudary, we were there, and we saw gendarmes.
Oui.
So there's a special branch of the gendarmerie that's just for the canal?
Well, I know that in Paris there is a fluvial brigade
Yes.
of police, but in the Canal du Midi,
I think there is. I mean, they had a special car. I can't remember
really?
what it said on the side, but it's gendarmerie fluviale ou navale ou je sais pas quoi.
fluvial, c'est possible. Ouais.
Yeah.
But I never saw them. So
Okay.
no.
So you don't run into it a lot.
No.
Yeah.
Well, they have to control if you have your license. The fee for the canal is controlled by the guy who runs the lock. So I don't see, we don't have a lot of traffic. It's not like a drug channel or you know.
On the Canal du Midi, it's mostly tourists. I mean, it's mostly just leisure kind of boating.
Until the 50s, it has been used as freight carriers.
Yeah.
But right now, there is only one boat who makes regular trips to carry wine or stuff like that. And it's more, I don't think that on the financial side, it's very rentable. But they like to do that. And I think also that the cost of the ton by kilometers in a barge is very interesting. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to be in a hurry.
Yeah.
And also, if you have to deliver the freight to a place quite far away from the canal, then you have to put it on a truck.
Yeah.
And this makes the cost and all this thing much more difficult.
Yeah. It's more planning and all of that. So you must see a lot of joggers and bikers and runners and all of that. Is there a lot of that sort of activity along the canal?
Close to Toulouse, close to every city. But once you are in the wilderness, if I may say so, nobody.
Yeah.
Except some cyclists. It's a big challenge. People are trying to go from Narbonne up to Bordeaux cycling.
Yeah.
And my daughter did it last year.
Yeah.
And it's quite
a challenge?
Well, yeah, because they had their tent, so the bicycle is quite heavy, it's quite loaded. And I think it's a nice trip because you don't have a lot of up and downs because you're along the canal, but it's a long trip.
Yeah. Well, you have to go up and down when you're around the bridge.
Exactly.
Right.
And some locks also.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
It's not like being in the Pyrenees or...
no, nothing like that. Yeah, nothing like that. Cool. So, is it safe? I assume there's no crime or theft?
No, never had. Well, if you leave your boat, it's better to close it.
Yeah.
But I never heard bad stories of theft or boat being... No, I think it's quite safe.
It's quite safe. Yeah.
There's no problem.
Do you see families doing this? Or,
yeah.
Yeah? What's the vibe? Is it older people? Is it younger people?
A lot of retired people, a lot of English and American people, and also the sailboats, which avoid Gibraltar. I would say this 3 or 4 kinds of traveler.
Yeah. Are the sailboats faster than barges?
No, because the speed is limited. Because you have got some big motorboats, and they're supposed not to go more than 8 kilometers an hour because you will ruin the side of the canal if you go too fast with the wave.
The churn, yeah.
So really it's important not to go too fast.
You can't speed.
Well, people do it, especially a rented boat. They want to have fun during 10 minutes, but it's stupid. I mean, and you will have a lock, and it's a question of respect also for the surrounding.
Yeah, just follow the rules.
Exactly, and also enjoy the scenery. I mean, if you go fast, you have to. The guy who is at the helm, if you go fast, has to be more concentrated. So it's better to do it smooth.
So somebody has to be at the helm all the time.
Yeah. This is compulsory. Of course, the rules is that one guy has to have the license, but if there are 2 people or 3 people able to drive the boat, they can drive, since the guy who has the license is on board.
I see. Yeah.
So I very often invite friends, and Most of the time, they like to steer for an hour or two, and then they get bored. Or when you're starting, you really need more concentration, because the boat don't react like a car, don't react like a sailboat, and you have to get used to the movement of the boat. This boat is 20 tons heavy.
Yeah.
So when there is a turn to make, it reacts very strangely. The first time you have to understand how it reacts, and it needs some concentration.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, it's a matter of you spend half an hour and you know it.
So how many days a year do you sail?
I try to, except in COVID.
Yeah, that was different. Yeah.
Okay. I try to make one cruise at springtime and one cruise in autumn. So it could be like a month in spring and a month in fall, or 3 weeks or whatever. This year, due to some personal problem, I would probably just take a week to go to Seuil de Naurouze, and for the spring, and in the fall, maybe more. My big idea is to go up to Bordeaux, and then go on River Dordogne.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I would say, 6 or 7 weeks back and forth.
Ah.
But the problem, in my case, is to schedule the thing, to invite friends, but to be able to leave them in a city where there is a railway station.
Right, so they can get back.
Yeah, and this is quite difficult to settle.
Yes, yes.
Everybody has his own time limit, and
Right.
sometimes it was nearly a nightmare.
Because you have to drop them off in a town that has a railway station.
And the next one, you don't want to spend a week waiting for the next one, so the next one has to come the next days or within 2 days. So sometimes it's a bit tricky to... Well, I succeed, but long cruise, and you mustn't have any problem. If you have stuck in a place for a mechanical issue, then all the planning is ruined.
Yes, yes. Have you had many mechanical issues with this boat?
So far, so good. Touch
Knock
wood.
on wood, yeah.
Actually, when I bought the boat, the engine was brand new. So you can always have a mechanical issue, but if I have, it will be very hard luck if I had a problem with the engine, because the engine is totally new. So nothing, I don't know what could happen. But sometimes you have leaves or weeds. This engine are cooled with the water from the canal.
Yeah.
So you have a pump which takes the water from the canal, go in the engine and put it back.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have leaves at the intake, and it can be difficult to remove them.
Yeah.
Especially at the fall.
Yeah.
Fall is a bad time for
leaves.
For leaves, yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to wait to stop for an hour, try to... Well, now I'm getting used to it. I know to do it. But at the beginning, it can be a problem.
So what would you like people to know? Like, if people are interested in taking a cruise on the canal, what should they know? What wisdom would you share with them?
Well, if they want to rent a boat, you have a lot of companies. So it's not difficult to find a company. And they have very different size of boat. If you are a couple or if you are 8, you will find the right size of the boat. I don't know about the prices. What I would say is don't try, except if you have 2 months, don't try to visit all the canal in one time. It's better to do little, take times, stop not too late in the evening, relax. I would say don't be too ambitious in your schedule.
Yeah.
It's better to have spare time than to have not enough time.
So you said for Holland you had to have an app to show you all the different canals. What's the app that you use for canals in Europe?
Well, it's only for Holland and Belgium.
Okay.
Here, there is no intersection. The canal is straight, so you can't miss...
But like you say you would like to go to Bordeaux and then on the Dordogne. How do you figure out how to do that?
Well... It's very easy because the entrance of the River Dordogne is conspicuous. It's very easy to locate. Mm-hmm. What I was talking about is you can arrive in a place where you will have 4 or 5 canals.
Oh, in Holland.
In Holland.
Yeah.
And even with a precise map, you will have an hesitation.
Yes.
And they don't put any signs on the canals. There the app is really compulsory. But that's the only place in Europe, I would say, you have to have it.
Yeah.
In France, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah, you just look on the map to see
Exactly,
where it
exactly.
links.
It's very easy to buy maps. They have special maps for navigation on the rivers, and they're not very expensive. It's better to have it because also you have many information about where you will find a harbor, if there is electricity, showers, or etc. So have this map on board. Normally, if you rent a boat, they will provide you the maps.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a problem.
Yeah,
It's
that's
no
how you
problem.
plan it.
Yeah, yeah.
You just look at the maps.
Yeah.
And...
And you know that you will run at 8 kilometers an hour,
Right, so you can decide, you know how far you're going to go.
and you know how many locks you will have to pass.
Yeah.
20 minutes, or you would say to make sure 40 minutes every lock. Then you're done.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not very difficult.
Excellent.
Mm.
Excellent.
No.
All right. Anything else you want to tell us about?
Well, I mean, I think people who don't speak French, it would be better if they have a little experience in French.
Yes.
To communicate and to enjoy better meeting the French people.
Yes. Yeah, because the capitainerie, how do you say that in English? I don't even know. The
Harbour master.
Harbour master.
Mm.
I mean, they don't necessarily speak English.
Well, in the Canal du Midi, mostly they speak.
Okay.
Because there are so many foreign tourists. They speak English, but in the locks, they don't speak English.
Right. The guys who run the locks.
Well, I have to say that most of the locks on the canal automatic.
Oh.
You just have to push a button.
Oh, you have to find the button.
Yes, but most of the time, if I remember well, it's bilingual. So you will find the instruction in English and French. So that's not a problem. The tricky locks, the locks will have 2 stairs, I would say.
Yeah.
They are manual, so you will have a guy
A person you
but,
talk to. Are people friendly? Could you
Yeah.
make friends with the people that you dock with?
Yeah, in the harbor, right now it's not really the beginning of the season, but most of the time there is a good atmosphere. I mean, everybody is friendly, we help each other, and it's a nice ambience, I would say.
Yeah. Do you have? Are there people in Toulouse who live on their barges year round?
Right now, I had one friend, but he left. Not so many.
Okay.
But there is also another place in Toulouse when you can... You have more people spending the year long here because it's cheaper, but also it's not the same safety.
Right. L'Embouchure is not the same neighborhood at all as
No,
this.
it's
Yeah.
quite,
Yeah. If I had to choose, I would come here too.
Definitely.
Yes.
There is Ramonville-Saint-Agne,
Yeah.
which has a big harbor.
Yeah.
But the problem of Ramonville is the traffic. If you want to leave the boat with your car, you have to choose the hour of the day. So for me, this is ideal. I mean, I love music, so the Allogrin is like 10 minutes walking.
It's perfect. It's perfect. You really have a lovely place.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hardly move. I mean, we've been sitting here for an hour and it doesn't move very much.
No, it's not like a sailboat, and we are not in open waters.
Yeah.
So you don't have any wave. You just feel the wind drift. When there is a big wind, for instance, you will feel the boat moving a little bit, but nothing to compare with a sailboat.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. Well, santé. We're going to have apéro. Hein?
Oui.
Il n'y a plus qu'à. Hein? Lovely talking to you about your beautiful barge. Thank you very much.
With pleasure.
Again, I want to thank my patrons for supporting the show and giving back. Patrons get several exclusive rewards for doing so. You can see them at patreon.com/join us. And I'm going to change my rewards on July 14th to celebrate Bastille Day this year. I'll be making changes to the rewards structure because I've talked to my patrons. I know what they want, and so I'll give them more of that. Thank you all so much for supporting the show. Some of you have been doing it for a long time. You are wonderful. And a shout out this week to new patrons, Illyria Salzar, Caitlin Petit, Eddie Hamalian, Glenn Hackbarth. Thank you so much for becoming patrons and making this podcast possible. My thanks also to Marie Hackbarth. Wow, you guys are generous. And Ellen Connert for sending in a one-time donation by using the green button on any page on joinusinfrance.com that says tip your guide. And if you're preparing a trip to France and listening to as many episodes of the podcast as you can to get ready, keep listening. It's a very good way to prepare your trip to France. But keep in mind that you should also use the website where you can search for specific places that you'd like to hear about. You can also hire me to be your itinerary consultant. I've made some changes to the service to make it better. Here's how it works now. You purchase the service on joinusinfrance.com/boutique. Then you fill out a document to let me know what you have in mind. We make a phone appointment and then we chat for about an hour. And after our chat, I send you a document with the plan we've discussed. It works very well. It helps me zoom in on what you want better because I get to ask you questions rather than just read your answers. So it's a very good way to do this. But my time is always booked up quite far in advance. You'll see the date of my next appointment availability on the page where you can buy this service. It's the only place where you can buy the service, so you'll see the date if you pay attention. So take a look at that and make sure that your trip is not like 2 days after that date because it's going to be hard for me to fit you in. If you cannot talk to me because I'm all booked up, you can still take me in your pocket by getting my GPS self-guided tours on the Voice Map app. I've produced 5 tours of Paris. They are designed to show you around different wonderful neighborhoods of Paris. And, I'm aware that this is new. This is a new way to travel with apps, but apps can really be a game changer and make your life much, much easier. And if you go to the boutique, joinusinfrance.com/boutique, you can get those tours at a discount. And it's also better for me because I get to keep more of the money since Apple and Google, which are already very, very rich, don't get to keep 30% of the whole thing. So please go through my website to get those tours and just have me in your pocket. I'm telling you, these are an excellent, excellent way to discover Paris. For the travel question of the week, let's talk about taxis in Paris. Now, if you've been to Paris a million times and you know this already, you have your way of doing it, feel free to skip this section. I'm going to talk here to people who haven't been to Paris at all, or maybe only once years ago, and they want to make sure because we get so many questions about this. So this question came from Camille. She reached out on the Facebook group and she wrote, I remember Annie Sargent saying that the ride from CDG, that's the Paris airport, was about 60 euros with a slightly higher fare to the left bank. Also, Annie, after reading about the group member who was badly overcharged a few weeks ago, maybe tips on dealing with taxi issues would be a good short episode. So let's get it done. Let me answer your questions. Okay, first of all, in June 2022, the set fare between CDG and the left bank in Paris, the left bank being the Latin Quarter, is 58 euros. And between CDG and the right bank, so that's Le Marais, it's 53 euros. The fare for one car between Paris and CDG or between Paris and CDG is the same. It works in either direction. There is also a set fare between the Orly airport, which is the other airport in Paris and the center of Paris, but almost none of you will fly into Orly, so it doesn't apply, so I won't go into that. It's cheaper to do Orly to Paris than CDG to Paris because Orly is closer to the city. Now, how do you make sure that you get that set rate? The only thing you have to do is take the trouble to walk to the official taxi line at Charles de Gaulle at CDG. Where is the official taxi line? Like all airport in the world, the taxi line is outside of the terminal and there are signs pointing you to it. When you get there, it's obvious it's an official taxi line because it's a bit like a Disneyland line. It's like there's a roof over your head, there's bars to keep everybody in line. It's first come, first serve. Sometimes there's a lot of people ahead of you. Sometimes you get to walk straight to the front, just like Disneyland. Between your gate and the curb, people will solicit you to give you a ride. Why do they do that? Because they are not licensed Paris taxis, which means they can charge whatever they want, whatever they can squeeze out of you. Do not get on a ride of any sort with anyone who asked you if you'd like to ride with them. That's it. If they ask you, you say no. The end. It's really easy. It's like phone solicitation, If somebody calls you say, I'm from the bank, give me a password. You say, hell no, right? Same with taxis. If they say, I'm a taxi, let me give you a ride. You say, hell no, I'll go find my own taxi. Thank you very much. Why do they let people solicit unsuspecting visitors in Paris? Well, because an airport is a public space and it's not against the law to talk to strangers in France. So this is a buyer beware type of situation, but there are signs all over the airport warning visitors not to accept solicitations and to get to the official taxi line. Lots of people get taken all the same because they don't think or they don't read or maybe they've never traveled before. I'm not sure, but do not accept any solicitations. Some taxis can only take 3 people and some can take more. Some cars have more space for luggage and nobody rides next to the driver. So in a regular car, it can only take 3 passengers. What if there are 4 of you? Do you need to book a special something or other that can take 4 of you? No, you do not. When it's your turn, and you're in line for the taxi, there will be a human being managing the line. That person will take a look at your group and signal for a taxi that fits your group. Some taxi drivers have a regular sedan, others drive a van. There's all sorts of vehicles, okay? So that person managing the line will call the right taxi for you. You will pay the same amount, 53 or 58, depending on if you're going left bank or right bank. No matter what the size of the vehicle is, it's one vehicle, one fee. You might need more than one car if there's like a lot of you, more than 5 of you with luggage. I would expect that you would need more, 2 cars. But if it's a van can take 5 people with luggage, perhaps 6. I don't know. It just depends on, how big you are and all of that. When it's time to get back to the airport at the end of your trip, the same rules apply. If you go to the nearest taxi line in Paris, pay attention to this, if you go to the nearest taxi line in Paris. There are places in Paris where taxis park waiting for customers. They are all over the place. One example is right outside of the Saint-Paul metro station in the Marais, also not far from Angelina's on Rue de Rivoli. There are taxis parked there almost day and night. There are many others. Look around where you are staying near your hotel. There might be a place where taxis habitually go to park to wait for customers. And if you get in a taxi at those spots, you will pay either 53 or 58, depending on whether you are taking the taxi in the left bank or in the right bank. If instead of walking to a taxi line, you get your hotel to call you a taxi, you'll pay a few more euros because the taxi had to come to you. I think it's an extra 3 euros in that case. If you reserve a taxi the night before, you'll also pay a little extra for the reservation. I think it's 7 euros in that case. Nights, weekends, holidays, the same fares apply. So don't worry if it's Christmas Day, same price. Can Paris taxis take credit cards? Yes, they can. They would not be a licensed Paris taxi if they couldn't take cards. A small number of people who visit France, for some reason, have problems getting their credit cards to work in France. Thankfully, that's a very, very small number, but you don't want it to happen to you, right? So bring your credit card because you're used to using that, but also bring a debit card. So just bring a debit card and set up Apple Pay or Google Pay because contactless works everywhere in France. Like Apple Pay is amazing. It works everywhere. And it wouldn't hurt, you could stop and withdraw some cash at an ATM on your way when you get off of the plane, you're probably going to walk in front of an ATM in the airport. You could stop and get some cash there. Or you could order a little bit of cash from your bank. The exchange kind of counters are usually a ripoff, but I mean, it's up to you. You can do that too if you would like. At any rate, another thing that happens is that taxis have a terrible habit of working for cash and not declaring all of their income. If you pay with a credit card, they'll need to declare it. There's a trace to this. And this is true all over the world, okay? Anyone who travels a lot knows that. So some taxi drivers will tell you that they don't take cards or that their card reader is broken. Boo-hoo. One even did it to me. He thought I was an American because I was speaking English on the phone. And when I went to pay, I handed him my credit card and he said, "Oh, my reader is broken." So I told him in French that I had no cash and that if he wanted to get paid, he'd better make the reader work. Miracle of miracles, the reader started to work. So they are trying to take advantage of you. Do not let them. And don't try to be nice. This is a business transaction. It's not your next best friend in France, okay? It's a business transaction. They take credit cards. You wish to pay with a credit card, legal tender and all, okay? That's how it works. If you want to make sure that they take credit cards, you could, before you get into the taxi, ask the driver. The driver is the one that matters. If he or she takes credit cards, tell them, "I don't have cash." That way, there will be no surprises. And again, if you use Apple Pay or Google Pay at home, be assured that this works everywhere in France. I never pull out my plastic card anymore. Apple Pay on my Apple Watch works great. It works with the phone as well. There is no need to sign anything with either French or American credit cards. It's wonderful because with French cards, we haven't had to sign French cards for a long time. But Americans, when they come to France, they usually get asked to sign. And sometimes there's a problem because the reader is out of paper, blah, blah, blah. Okay, with Apple Pay or Google Pay, no need to sign anything. It's truly wonderful. So here's my advice. Bring a debit card, possibly two if you have them, from different banks would be good, and set up Apple Pay or the equivalent Google Pay. Contactless payments are a game changer for ease of use and security as well. Learn about them, use them. It's great. Lastly, do you need to tip your taxi driver? Well, that's up to you. I always tip waiters because I think waiting tables is such a hard job. Taxi drivers, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. If the taxi driver did a superb job, of course I tip. But it's up to you. There's no obligation. These people charge enough to make a fair wage, and that's what we want. So next time someone asks on Facebook, and trust me, it'll be about 5 minutes before someone else asks, point them to this answer instead of telling them some horror story that you've heard that may or may not be true. If people understand how things work in France a little better, there will be fewer scammers taking advantage of you, dear visitors. Show notes and a full transcript for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/392, the numeral 392. Transcripts are wonderful and are your friend because once you know where we discuss something, it's easy to both share it and listen to it again yourself. You can help your friends who are planning their trip to France by sending them to joinusinfrance.com. You can help your friends who are planning trips to France by going yourself to joinusinfrance.com. To any episode or the main page, there are share buttons on the right side. And then you can tag your friend and they'll see it. And they will thank you because they need to know this stuff, right? Next week on the podcast, an episode with Elise about the Tour de France, the bike race, which starts on July 1st this year. So coming up very soon. Send questions or feedback And I did not give you a personal update this time because this is a very long closing type thing. And I'm on vacation. So I'll tell you all about my vacation on another occasion, okay? Send questions or feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope you join me next time so we can look around France together. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2022 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.